What would you like to play instead of big boy who doesn't know always what's on?
I agree.
I would like to play a small woman who doesn't know always.
For millions of viewers, John Goodman and Roseanne Barr weren't just sitcom stars, they were television royalty. Their on-screen connection felt completely natural, making audiences believe they were watching a real family instead of actors reading lines. Week after week, fans laughed with them, related to them, and welcomed them into their homes. For years, it seemed impossible to picture one without the other. But behind the massive success, huge ratings, and unforgettable moments was a story that would eventually take a surprising and painful turn. Now, after years of keeping quiet, John Goodman has finally spoken about what happened behind the scenes, why he and Roseanne no longer communicate, and how one of television's most iconic partnerships ultimately fell apart. Long before public controversies, cancellations, and headlines took over the conversation, Goodman and Barr were considered one of the strongest acting teams on television. When Roseanne premiered, it immediately stood out from nearly every other sitcom on the air. Instead of showing wealthy families living perfect lives in spotless homes, the series focused on the Connors, a hardworking family trying to make ends meet while dealing with jobs, bills, parenting struggles, and everyday problems. Viewers connected with that honesty because it reflected real life. That authenticity helped transform the show into a television powerhouse. At the center of the show's success was the relationship between Roseanne Connor and Dan Connor. John Goodman brought heart, humor, and a relatable warmth to Dan, while Roseanne Barr delivered the sharp humor and bold personality that made the series different from anything else on television. According to Goodman, their bond formed almost instantly. Looking back years later, he recalled, "We hit it off from Jump Street. She made me laugh, and I made her laugh." That natural chemistry became one of the biggest reasons audiences kept tuning in every single week. The numbers were incredible. During its peak, Roseanne consistently drew between 20 and 30 million viewers. In an era when families gathered around the television together, the sitcom became one of the biggest programs in the country. Goodman later described those years as something special, not just because of the ratings, but because genuine friendships developed among many members of the cast and crew. It felt like lightning in a bottle. But success came with challenges that viewers never saw. While Roseanne was becoming one of the most watched shows in America, Goodman was privately dealing with struggles that remained hidden from the public eye. The fame that came with the show's popularity slowly began changing his life in ways he never expected. What initially seemed exciting eventually became overwhelming. Goodman later admitted that losing his anonymity was far more difficult than he anticipated. Suddenly, everywhere he went, people recognized him. Simple errands became public events. What once felt flattering gradually turned into something exhausting. As the years went by, the pressure only continued to build. His work on the show earned widespread praise, including a Golden Globe Award for his portrayal of Dan Connor. Yet despite the accolades and success, he found himself becoming increasingly unhappy behind the scenes. The non-stop attention, demanding schedule, and pressure that came with being part of one of television's biggest shows began taking a serious toll. Eventually, he turned to alcohol as a way of coping with those feelings. While Roseanne continued dominating television ratings, Goodman was fighting a personal battle that most fans knew nothing about. On screen, Dan Connor was the dependable husband and father who could always be counted on for a laugh or a heartfelt moment. Off-screen, Goodman was struggling with stress, fame, and alcoholism. As the years passed, those issues became harder and harder to ignore. Years later, Goodman spoke openly about that difficult chapter in his life.
I started getting very lucky with commercial work, and that provided me with the resources to sit on a bar stool for most of the day. And I fell in with a bunch of like-minded actors up in the West Side. There were several places we went to, and I felt at home with these guys.
Yeah.
And that was fun until after I got married, and I kept doing it. It wasn't fun anymore. And then the last 10 years were just terrible.
He explained that when Roseanne first exploded in popularity, he genuinely enjoyed the attention. Like many performers, he appreciated the recognition that came from being part of one of the most successful television shows in the country. but over time, that excitement began changing into something much darker. He remembered how frightening it became to lose any sense of privacy. Everyday activities no longer felt normal. Going out in public often meant being recognized immediately. The constant attention started affecting him emotionally and mentally. What many people viewed as a dream life began feeling like a trap. As the show entered its later seasons, Goodman admitted he became increasingly dissatisfied. Even though he was winning awards and receiving praise from critics and audiences alike, he felt disconnected from the success surrounding him. He later confessed that he had become complacent and ungrateful. The career achievements that countless actors spend a lifetime chasing no longer brought him the fulfillment he expected. Instead, he felt stuck. After spending nearly 10 years working on the series, Goodman reached a point where he seriously considered walking away. The pressure had become overwhelming, and the personal struggles he was facing only made matters worse. Unfortunately, the way he chose to deal with those feelings pushed him even deeper into trouble. Goodman later revealed that alcohol became his escape from the pressures surrounding him. What may have started as a way to relax gradually turned into a serious dependency. Drinking became a regular part of his daily routine, and before long, it began affecting both his personal life and his professional responsibilities. According to Goodman, there were occasions when he showed up to work after drinking. He admitted that his speech sometimes became slurred during production, something that co-workers could not completely overlook. Although he continued trying to function, the situation was becoming increasingly difficult to manage. The wake-up call came after a weekend spent drinking with friends. Goodman missed an important rehearsal because he was intoxicated. Looking back, he recalled that even as he continued drinking, his body was physically shaking. In that moment, reality hit hard. For perhaps the first time, he fully understood how serious the problem had become. He realized his life was heading down a dangerous path and that professional help was necessary before things spiraled even further. That realization led him to enter rehabilitation. It was a difficult decision, but one that would ultimately change his life forever. Rather than allowing addiction to destroy everything he had built, Goodman chose to confront the problem head-on. The road was not easy, but the decision proved to be one of the most important turning points in his personal journey. Over time, he achieved long-term sobriety and remained committed to maintaining it. The battle was challenging, but Goodman emerged stronger, healthier, and more focused than he had been in years. His willingness to confront his struggles became one of the most respected aspects of his story. When Roseanne eventually ended its original run, Goodman made another major change. He decided to leave Los Angeles behind and move to New Orleans with his wife, Anna Beth. The relocation represented far more than a change of scenery. It marked a fresh chapter in his life after years of pressure, addiction struggles, and personal challenges. For Goodman, it was a chance to rebuild, refocus, and move forward on his own terms. For more than 2 decades, Roseanne seemed like a closed chapter in television history. The original series had earned its place as a sitcom classic, but very few people believed the cast would ever reunite in a meaningful way. Then, out of nowhere, the television industry started chasing nostalgia. Networks were bringing back familiar shows, and executives realized there was still huge value in revisiting beloved franchises. Before long, attention turned back to the Connor family. When the revival was officially announced, longtime fans exploded with excitement. Millions of viewers who had grown up watching the Connors were eager to find out where the family had landed after so many years. Surprisingly, even John Goodman wasn't completely convinced the project would succeed. Looking back later, he admitted that he expected it to be little more than a short reunion. Goodman believed the revival might only last a handful of episodes before quietly disappearing. Instead, the exact opposite happened. The premiere became an instant ratings success and generated enormous media buzz. Audiences were curious to reconnect with familiar characters, while critics praised the show's ability to return to the working-class themes that had originally made Roseanne stand out from the crowd. ABC quickly recognized that they had a major hit on their hands. The network wasted no time renewing the series for another season. For a brief period, it looked like the cast had achieved something incredibly rare in Hollywood. They had managed to revive a beloved sitcom decades after its original run and attract both loyal fans and a new generation of viewers at the same time. But while the revival was thriving on screen, serious problems were beginning to develop behind the scenes. Only months after the show's return, Roseanne Barr posted a social media message about Valerie Jarrett, a former advisor to President Barack Obama. The post immediately sparked widespread criticism and controversy. The reaction was swift, intense, and impossible to ignore. Public backlash spread rapidly across social media platforms. News organizations covered the story around the clock, and pressure quickly mounted on ABC to respond. The network acted fast. In a move that stunned much of the entertainment industry, ABC announced that Roseanne had been canceled. In its public statement, the company described Barr's comments as abhorrent, repugnant, and inconsistent with its values. The decision shocked many observers because the show was performing exceptionally well. Ratings remained strong, future episodes were already planned, and momentum was building for another successful season. Yet within days, everything changed. What had looked like a triumphant comeback suddenly came crashing down. For the cast, the cancellation created immediate uncertainty. Years later, Goodman revealed that he genuinely believed the story was over. Once production shut down, he assumed there was no realistic way forward. As far as he was concerned, Dan Connor's journey had finally come to an end. Goodman quickly shifted his attention to other opportunities and accepted a role in The Righteous Gemstones. He had no reason to believe the Connor family would ever return again. The situation felt final. The star whose name was attached to the franchise was gone. The reboot had been canceled, and the future seemed completely impossible. Yet executives were facing a difficult problem. Millions of viewers still cared deeply about the Connor family. The remaining cast members still wanted to continue working together. And despite the controversy surrounding Barr, audiences remained invested in the world those characters had built over decades. After ABC canceled Roseanne, many people assumed the entire franchise had reached the end of the road. The controversy dominated headlines, the central character was gone, and uncertainty surrounded everyone involved. But away from public view, conversations continued. Network executives and producers quietly explored whether the remaining cast could continue without the show's original star. Eventually, a decision was reached. The franchise would move forward. The result was The Connors, a continuation of the family's story without Roseanne Barr. It was a dramatic shift for a series that had been built around her character and creative vision for decades. To explain her absence, the new show revealed that Roseanne Connor had died from an opioid overdose. The storyline immediately established a clear separation from the past. It was a bold creative choice that signaled the franchise was entering an entirely new chapter. For Goodman, the transition came as a surprise. He had already moved on professionally because he honestly believed the revival had no future. When the opportunity arose to return as Dan Connor, he wasn't sure how long the new series would last. What happened next surprised almost everyone involved. Instead of collapsing without its original star, the Connors found a loyal audience and continued season after season. The show ultimately lasted 7 seasons, proving far more resilient than many industry insiders expected. Throughout that run, Goodman became one of the emotional foundations of the series. Dan Connor evolved into the central figure holding the family together. No longer part of a husband and wife comedy partnership, he became the steady presence guiding the family through loss, change, and everyday struggles. The show continued tackling the same themes that had always resonated with audiences. Financial hardships, family disagreements, grief, and working-class challenges remained at the heart of the story. Viewers continued connecting with those relatable experiences, and Goodman later admitted that he greatly enjoyed the opportunity to keep playing a character who had become such a major part of his life. But while the franchise managed to survive, the relationship between Goodman and Barr did not. As time passed, the distance between the former co-stars became permanent. The friendship that once helped create one of television's most beloved sitcoms slowly faded away. Years later, Goodman revealed that he and Barr had not spoken for roughly 7 or 8 years. When asked whether they still kept in touch, his answer was remarkably direct. He simply said that he doubted she even wanted to talk to him anymore. Despite the silence, Goodman consistently avoided publicly attacking Barr. In fact, some of his comments surprised many observers. During interviews following the controversy, he expressed sadness about how everything unfolded. He explained that he loved Barr, missed her, and genuinely wished her well despite everything that had happened. In another interview, Goodman went even further. He stated that he knew for a fact that Barr was not a racist. Those comments demonstrated that even though their relationship had ended, he was unwilling to erase the friendship and history they once shared. There was still a level of respect beneath the distance. Barr's perspective appeared far more complicated. In later interviews, she confirmed that she no longer communicated with Goodman or several other former cast members. While she acknowledged having wonderful memories from their years together, She also expressed disappointment and frustration over how everything ended. She was especially upset that her character had been written out of the series and that the show continued without her participation. At one point, she bluntly stated that none of them were her friends anymore and that they all belonged to her past. It was a statement that made it clear how deep the divide had become. When people talk about the end of Roseanne, many focus on one social media post, one controversy, or one network decision. But when you listen carefully to Goodman's reflections over the years, a more complex picture starts to emerge. The controversy may have triggered the collapse, but the real damage came from everything that happened afterward. Once trust disappeared, relationships changed. Cast members moved in different directions. New opportunities emerged, old connections faded, and the foundation that once held the entire project together was never fully rebuilt. The partnership that had seemed unbreakable simply could not return to what it once was. One of the most revealing moments came when Goodman was asked what he would say to Roseanne Barr if they crossed paths today. After years of silence, headlines, and speculation surrounding their estrangement, his answer was surprisingly simple. He said he would greet her with just 4 simple words. "Hi, how are you doing?" That answer caught many people off guard. There was no bitterness, no attempt to reopen old wounds, and no desire to settle scores in public. Instead, it sounded like the kind of greeting you give someone who once played a major role in your life. Even after years of distance and silence, Goodman chose calmness over conflict, and that approach has remained consistent every time he has discussed Roseanne Barr. Despite acknowledging that they have not spoken in nearly a decade, Goodman continues to talk about Barr with a mix of respect, affection, and sadness. He remembers the laughs they shared. He remembers the incredible success they experienced together. Most importantly, he remembers the television legacy they created side by side. Whenever he reflects on the original series, he keeps coming back to the same point. They worked well together, they connected naturally, and they created something that resonated with millions of viewers across America. At the same time, Goodman understands that some things simply cannot be recreated. Television history moved forward, and the circumstances surrounding Roseanne changed forever. The original series ended. The revival collapsed under controversy. Relationships shifted. Cast members went their separate ways. The franchise survived, but under a completely different identity. By the time The Conners wrapped up its 7-season run, the transformation was undeniable. What started as a continuation of Roseanne had gradually become its own separate show. The series evolved into something entirely different from the program that first introduced audiences to the Connor family decades earlier. For Goodman, saying goodbye was emotional. He openly admitted that he would miss the show and joked that being older had made him resistant to change. The experience seemed to fly by faster than anyone expected. What began as a project Goodman never believed would last eventually turned into another major chapter of his career. Season after season, the show found an audience and proved its staying power. Yet even while celebrating that success, there was an unavoidable reality hanging over everything. None of it would have existed without the original series that started it all. Perhaps the most revealing insight Goodman has ever shared is his explanation for why both Roseanne and the Conners connected with viewers for so many years. In his opinion, audiences saw themselves in the Connor family. They were not wealthy celebrities living glamorous lives. They were everyday people facing real-world problems. They worried about paying bills. They struggled with jobs. They dealt with health concerns, family disagreements, financial stress, and uncertainty about what tomorrow might bring. Those stories felt real because they reflected challenges that millions of people understood firsthand. That connection is one reason the end of Roseanne still sparks conversation today. For many viewers, it was never just another sitcom. It felt like a family they had grown up alongside for decades. People watched the characters face life's ups and downs, and over time, those characters became familiar faces in their homes. That kind of bond is difficult to replace. According to Goodman, what truly brought Roseanne to an end was bigger than a network decision or a headline-making controversy. The deeper loss involved the relationships, trust, chemistry, and unique creative partnership that made the show special in the first place. Once those elements disappeared, the franchise could continue in another form. But the original spark that made Roseanne a phenomenon could never be fully recreated. In many ways, the story of Roseanne is a story filled with incredible highs and painful lows. It includes massive success, unexpected controversy, fractured friendships, career-changing decisions, and a television family that was forever altered. Even after years of silence, Goodman still speaks about Barr with respect and acknowledges the special partnership they shared while creating one of the most successful sitcoms in television history. But as Goodman has made clear over the years, some chapters are meant to remain in the past. No matter how powerful the memories may be, certain doors close for good, and some stories can never return to the way they once were. What do you think about John Goodman's comments on Roseanne Barr after all these years? Let us know in the comments below. And as always, thank you for watching and spending your time with us. We truly appreciate your support, and we'll see you in the next video.